In 1919, the International Federation of Red Cross was formed, and it was formed to be able to consolidate the work and coordinate the work of the national societies of the Red Cross and Red Crescent around the world. These societies respond to disasters. They decide to respond to conflict, any arena where there's a massive likelihood of human suffering. Today, there are 190 national societies. Now, I mentioned that this is a federation. A federation does not operate like a top-down organization. Each of the societies is legally independent from every other society and from the headquarters in Switzerland of the federation. The reason they come together is they have a common system of core principles that is the driving force around what the Red Cross does and how it does it. These are those principles. The first of these is a focus on humanity. It's a focus on alleviating suffering of people, of ensuring the dignity of people, of preserving the health and the life of people in virtually any form of conflict or challenge that societies, communities, even individuals could see. The second of these, impartiality, means the Red Cross cannot operate with discrimination. It cannot discriminate for reasons of race, religion, preference of political systems. None of that is allowed. The Red Cross has to be completely impartial so that it can bring its services to all of humanity. The third value is neutrality. Now, what does neutrality mean? It means that the Red Cross can't pick which political party they want to support. They can't favor an ideology over other ideologies. In all of the work they do, they have to be neutral to any of these kinds of issues throughout that community, that society. The fourth one is independence. The Red Cross, Red Crescent societies, they operate within national environments. The American Red Cross operates in America, in the United States. It cannot be part of the government because then it's going to get tied up in those other things we talked about. The American Red Cross and many other societies are chartered by their governments. Their governments have endorsed them as being that Red Cross or Red Crescent society. But they're not paid, they receive no funding, and they are independent in decision-making from the government. The Red Cross delivers its services with volunteers. Roughly 99+% of all the work that is done is by volunteers with a small group of ongoing employees. Those volunteers don't get paid. They offer their time and their expertise free. Okay? And the Red Cross doesn't get paid. There is no financial gain for the Red Cross in doing what they do. There is unity within the Red Cross. Now, what this means in the Red Cross is that there's only a single Red Cross entity in every country. It has to represent all of the people in that country. It has to provide its services to all of the territories in that country. And it doesn't have another Red Cross doing these people or those people, because that would run counter to some of the other principles here. And the last one is it's universal. Universal means this. There are 190 societies, all forming this federation. Every one of them has the same equal vote. It has the same level of influence. Doesn't matter if it's a wealthy society or a poor one, a large one or a small one. Everybody's equal. But they equally have the same responsibility to support other national societies if needed. So those are the principles under which the Red Cross operates worldwide. Now, let's take a look at the arena of disasters and see if we can get an understanding of how that all might work. Disasters typically fall into a couple of categories. There are man-made disasters. There are natural disasters. There are conflicts. They are unpredictable. Okay? In a disaster, you have the following kind of progression. You have the work that needs to be done before the disaster ever hits. If you don't do that well, you're not likely to handle the disaster. There's the time that the disaster is with you, and then there's the time afterwards to recover. Red Cross, Red Crescent societies operate across all of those spectrums. Now, here's what a disaster isn't. It's not the event. Sure, everybody here remembers Hurricane Sandy. Okay? Hurricane Sandy was not a disaster. The results of Hurricane Sandy, coming together with how it was handled, that was the disaster. So the event triggers a potential disaster. How well all of those other three areas have been dealt with make the difference. If you were to look at Katrina, New Orleans, the hurricane in New Orleans was not a problem. The fact that the levees were never maintained and never kept up to the height they were, where New Orleans was shrinking, caused the breaking. And the breaking is what caused the disaster. It was the lack of proper pre-work for that. So the Red Cross follows all of those, gets involved in its communities in dealing with all of those. But in every society, it does it differently. Why? The cultures are different. The languages are different. The abilities of the government, the other NGOs are different. The resources available to the local Red Cross or Red Crescent are quite different. Okay? In these disasters, you start at a very local level. You have a single family fire. It can be handled by a local unit, a chapter. A big apartment house fire might need a couple of other chapters to come in. A regional flood might need a statewide group. And it gets larger and larger. The largest disasters required not only a full national society, but help from many societies. Now, if you look at the disaster which we call the tsunami in Indonesia, there were 14 separate countries that were involved in that tsunami. 230,000 people were killed in a matter of a couple of hours. And that doesn't count the untold people who are injured or affected. Entire villages were gone. Okay? That involved a massive undertaking. Virtually the entire world of the Red Cross got involved. The American Red Cross sent volunteers. They sent special capability that the Indonesians didn't have. And they sent $1 billion, which came to the Red Cross from American donors in support of the Indonesian effort. So that's how the system works. I'd like you to think about this for a minute. The Red Cross itself was started in 1863. In 1863, if you were sitting here in Lancaster and there was a disaster in Chile, how long would it take you to find out about it? And once you found out, if you wanted to help, How long would it take you to get there? All of that would have taken an enormous amount of time. So in 1863, the Red Crosses had to be organized locally to be able to respond to any kind of local issue, large or small. And that's how they were. Time goes on, transportation technology changes, communication technology changes, information flow changes, and all of that requires changes in operations. The Red Cross was able to do this successfully because of the nature of these principles, this value system, and its federated network, looking at local requirements, local needs, and local capabilities. Okay? So that's a very important piece for how the Red Cross, and by extension, a federated type organization, can stay able as time progresses and things change in the world. And the Red Cross has that base of values to be consistent to go there. Okay? Now, I'd like to take a look for a minute at the future. Okay? The future, the scientists tell us, and you've heard this from others today, is going to have massive issues involving changes in climate. The future is going to present us with populations of people that are far more mobile. Why are they mobile? They have better information instantly available. They know where opportunities are. They know what their environments are versus some other places. And they've got transportation capabilities that can get them there. They today have lots of blockages to move, but that might not always exist. What else are we going to see? We're going to see a connectedness economically around the nations of the world. The Chinese economy starts to slow up. What happens in Brazil? There is a meltdown of a nuclear reactor in Japan. What happens to American car companies who get their parts from that part of Japan? So this interconnectedness is going to be continuing to grow and will radically affect the kinds of things that disasters will play in. You think about it, disasters don't respect borders. The forest fire doesn't stop when it gets to the county line. The flood doesn't go away when it hits the end of the country. The tsunami doesn't quiet down when it gets out of that territory. Okay? And we need to be able to recognize that. If the scientists are correct, we're going to see more and more major disasters. And we're going to see a frequency that's much greater. When Katrina hit, it hit at a time that the Red Cross was American Red Cross, about 125 years old. It was the largest disaster the American Red Cross had ever seen, by 20-fold. Same thing can be said about the tsunami and meltdown in Japan. And you can look at others in the same way. So we're going to have this huge challenge. We're going to see people, maybe whole societies moving. And not just for reasons of warfare, but for economic benefit. Okay? All of this is going to go on. If you look at the way we try to handle them today and have tried to handle them in the past, we try to handle them through national or international type of agreements, negotiations. We try to put together these pacts between countries. If you look at the word international, what does it say? It says between nations. Think for a minute about that concept of between nations and the concept of nations itself. When you put together agreements between nations, you have two or more nations, each of which are trying to get benefit for their own nation in the agreement. And they want a better benefit than the other nation is getting. Okay? If they get that, that's great. If they don't, they disregard the agreement. Many times they disregard it anyway. How many agreements have we seen that never get acted on? The Congress does an improvement, a parliament disagrees with it, or it doesn't become popular. International approaches may not work in this new world. I don't view the Red Cross as an international organization. It's got international in its title, but I don't view it that way. It doesn't stop at borders. In conflict in Israel and Palestine, the Israeli Mogen David Adom Society, which is the Red Cross component there, and the Palestinian Red Crescent go together to help the wounded in the conflict. They don't stop at the border. Okay? That is a different approach. I think of that as a transnational organization. It cuts across these national issues. It's got principles that don't speak of power. They don't speak of advantage. They speak about helping where help is needed and helping in ways that provide dignity and ability for all people. Maybe we should consider transnational approaches to the big issues we're trying to solve that are so difficult for us today. Thank you.